Happy Sunday. Welcome back to the show, Indestructible Souls. It is Sunday, February 28th, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for continuing to support the show, Indestructible Souls, Mental Wellness for African American Men and Boys. And today, we are going to talk about Fatherhood 101 for young and new fathers. But before we get into that, I don't know how I sound. Now, before we get into that, I want to plug a couple of things. Don't forget, I'm Jonathan Beauregard, your host of Indestructible Souls, and I'm also the owner and proprietor and primary therapist for Beauregard Therapy. And you can contact me on several platforms. You can check me out on Psychology Today. You can also check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And so that is Beauregard Therapy. Also, coming up, I wanted to let you know and let everyone know about this upcoming group for men, particularly African American men. And it's called Hearts of Men, mental wellness group for African American men moving forward together. Now, I did want to let you know that this is not a therapy group, although it will be and is intended to be therapeutic in nature. This is a group that Black men twice a month can come together and talk about various topics that affect us on a daily basis. So this group will be on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock, and you can sign up on Eventbrite. You can email me directly at heartsofmen@beauregardtherapy.com, and it will be hosted by my lifelong friend, partner from high school, my buddy, Jerome Washington. Most of you may know him by Amar Washington. He's also a therapist out of Florida, and we will be partnering up to run this group. So any men or men that you know that might be interested and that could benefit from it, keep in mind that this is not a therapy group, although it will be therapeutic in nature. And the hope is that it is life-changing in nature. And we can find common ground as well as build community for Black men, men of color. So check it out. It is coming up in April, and I'm excited about it. It will be via Zoom because of the pandemic. And at some point, the hope is that it will be in person so we can actually connect to one another as Black men. So let's get into the show. Once again, thank you. You are joining Indestructible Souls, mental wellness for African American men and boys. And today, I kind of like this topic, and it is Fatherhood 101 for young and new fathers. Because some of us fathers may not be may not be young, but definitely we are new fathers. So here's why I thought this would be a very important topic to discuss. Looking at a lot of young fathers, and when I mean by young, I mean it's the world we live in, that are fresh out of high school, not too far out of high school, maybe in high school, not married for, whatever reason. As we know, this is the world we live in. It is what it is. However, I think well, not I think, I know a lot of us take fatherhood, I'm not going to say for granted, but people don't understand the transition that young men, and I'll say young men of color, but I'm going to talk in general terms because my assumption would be that it's similar across culture. The transition and the struggle of going from a young individual with hopes and dreams and all of those things, and then to now here's fatherhood. And if I ask 10 people of what fatherhood means, I probably get 10 different answers. And that's fine. So I'm going to give you my definition of fatherhood, but also I'm going to talk about my transition of from fatherhood to from being a high school athlete, star athlete, I might say, coming out of high school, on my way to college or in college, to boom, here we are in fatherhood, and how that transition affects young men. It affects Black men, but also that transition, if not handled correctly, if that transition isn't handled correctly, that's why we have so many older men that struggle with fatherhood and struggle with relationships. So, as we know, well, for most of us, and I'll say most of us, fatherhood is probably one of the worst, one of the most, excuse me, most rewarding things that ever happened to us. It is it is basically the beginning of our legacy. I believe most of us dream of having kids, whether we have boys, whether we have daughters. It's a part of what many of us may believe. It's a part of what makes us men, is to be able to have kids, be able to have children, and foster a family and raise a family of our own that says that I was here on earth and my legacy for generations to come will play out through my descendants, right? So I think most men value fatherhood, but that's not what we always see in our community. And today, my hope is to give you some idea as to why this transition is so difficult and how to get through this transition. So let me tell you my story really quick. I have two daughters. I have two adult daughters, 25 and 28. And I won't even talk about the transition just yet. So here I am. I'm an athlete coming out of high school and studying at Long Beach State, obviously playing football and all those things. And then I have a girlfriend back home, right? And this is supposed to be my time to go to college, play football, try to, make it to the NFL, get a degree, whatever, all of that stuff that, those dreams that we set. And, obviously I have a girlfriend. Yes, we're having sex. And here we go. So one day I'm coming home from class, and back then we had uh what do you call it? The answering machines. We didn't have cell phones. And I get a answer machine. I get a message on the answering machine, and it says it's the kid's mom, and tells me over the answering machine that I'm going to be a dad. Okay, right? So all of these feelings had rushed, not no feelings of oh no, or we can't have it. That never crossed my mind, nothing like that. But what did cross my mind is, okay, now what? Now what? I'm in college, I'm on a football scholarship, and I still got a lot of life to live. But now I have this life coming, I have this baby coming within the next 9 months that now I have to consider, or not. Hmm, we'll talk about that. Or not. And in this day and age that we live in, for some people, there's a or not. but we're not going to get to that quite right now. And I remember, I tell my roommate, I tell some other friends I'm gonna have a baby, and eventually tell my mom, and the rest is history, as they say. The only thing I knew about fatherhood at that time, and I hate to say it this way, and it is what it is, the only thing I knew about fatherhood is I didn't want to be like my father. That's all I knew. Meaning, I didn't know what fatherhood looked like. I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. I just knew that I didn't want to be like my father. The other thing is, I knew I wanted to be a provider. Here's why that's key. A lot of young men believes that being a provider is where their job begins and ends. We'll talk about that. And I knew I wanted to be a provider, and I knew that I didn't want to be like my dad. Here's where life, and this is going to be the gist of the show, the gist of this episode. There was a transition period for many, many years, believe it or not, that I don't think that the world prepares us for. Our parents don't prepare us for it. Why? Because our parents are teaching us or parenting us from a place that they were taught, unless there's some world out there that I don't know about, which there might be. How often does fathers sit their boys down and say, hey, one day you're going to be a father. This is what fatherhood is. Now, indirectly, but intentionally, maybe not. I don't have the research for that, but we'll talk about it. There was a transition period that I think most men and young fathers go through that I'm going to talk about today. Why is this so important? This transition, if not dealt with directly, but not only not dealt with directly, if not understood, if not even understood, how do a young father even know how to navigate it if they don't know what they're going through? Now, here's the problem. If me as a father don't know what I'm going through, this transition period that I'm going to talk about, if the woman that I'm with don't recognize what I'm going through as a young father, as a new father, and the people around me don't know what I'm going through as a young father, as a new father, how am I supposed to navigate it safely? And that's why not only do fathers struggle, that's why relationships struggle in terms of young relationships that have kids. Now, let's talk about this transition. And just a quick caveat, real quick, just about the show. I am attempting to tighten up the platform of the show. And so, in that being said, I'm going to do shorter shows just so people can grasp everything, but tonight might not be that night. So let's talk about that transition of from individual to father. What does that look like? My imagination is that it's going to look a little different for different people of where they're at in their life. Follow me on this, where they're at in their maturity, not just maturity, but emotional maturity, where they're at in their mental maturity, and where they're at in life. So here we are, young men, and what I mean by young, I mean younger than 30, right? And during this time, it is our job, or not our job, but is our opportunity. And believe it or not, when we get into adolescence, the world is about me. This is my time to be an individual. This is my time to take on the world. This is my time to challenge who I am. This is my time to do all of the things that I've ever set out to do, whether it's work, date, play sports, whether it's find a career, go to college, all of these things. The world is about me. Now, here's what happens. Now I have a child on the way, and it's celebration time. I get to walk around and, if I'm happy about it, okay, there's another story where people aren't happy about it. We'll talk about that on a different show. But for the sake of this conversation, I got a kid on the way. I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it, and I'm going to be a dad. And everything in the world is fine. Here's what happens. I have control of my life. But when I begin to have kids and I transition from self to fatherhood, I now lose control. Why do I lose control? Because here's what I mean by lose control. I have a kid. I got to raise this kid. I got to take care of this kid. I have to be a part of this kid's life. Now, what I mean by lose control, life is no longer just about me. But here's the tug of war. Here's the tug of war. The tug of war is, can I transition from being selfish to being selfless as a father? And that is a constant struggle in the beginning. Why? This is my time to take care of things. This is my time to be my own man. This is my time to explore and take over the world. But now I have a transition to where this tug of war and this back and forth of, now I have a child, now I have a human being to take care of, but innately I still have my own desires to fulfill. Is it always easy to put aside my own desires for the sake of my child? On the surface, it sounds like an easy question. It sounds like an easy answer, but that's not always the case. So I go from having to be, or being allowed to be selfish, and I don't mean that necessarily in the negative sense, to now I have to transition from being selfish to being selfless. But I still got my partners. I still want to do this. I still want to be able to do certain things and buy certain things and all these things. And now I have a kid. It's a constant tug of war in terms of transition. Here's another thing. When we talk about the other transition of fatherhood, nothing will make you look in the mirror more than having a child, having a human being to take care of, and wondering if I have the ability to take care of this child, to take care of this person, but not just take care of, but to influence. Now, if I'm struggling as a man or as a young person, a young man, if I'm struggling with finding my way and putting my stamp on the world, how do I affect another person to do the same? So another piece of that transition is about insecurity. Am I insecure in my ability to affect this life positively, to take care of this life, but not just take care of, but to influence this life? So that transition from being selfish to being selfless, that transition from, am I ready? Do I have it? Can I do it? Am I enough? So that moment of insecurity, am I going to be able to be able to be the father that this kid needs? So that transition and being able, or now having to look at all of these insecurities, is a part of that transition that sometimes, believe it or not, some men back out of it. For one, because they still want to be selfish, but for two, because they're so insecure in their own abilities that they rather not participate than be constantly reminded of their insecurities, their vulnerabilities, and their inability to affect life. believe it or not. Here's another piece of that transition. So we got the selfish to selfless, the insecurities. Am I able to affect life? Now, here's the other thing. When we talk about this transition from being a non-father to a father, is having a kid is supposed to be a stamp of fatherhood. But we soon, well, let me take that back. It's supposed to be a stamp of manhood, not fatherhood, manhood. Now, here's the thing. If I have not come into my own, follow me on this, and this may take some explaining to do. I'm still living at home. I'm living or being supported by someone else. I still need my parents' support. I still need my woman's support. But fatherhood is supposed to be a stamp of manhood. But if I have not come into my own as a man, guess what? I struggle as a father. How, the psyche, how can I be a father when I don't even know the essence of my own manhood? Because fatherhood is supposed to be a stamp. But if I'm still immature, emotionally immature, mentally immature, if I still want to do certain things that I still should have time to do, but now I'm supposed to be a man, but I haven't even established what manhood is for me, but now I have a child to take care of. So this transition becomes very difficult, and we begin to parent, meaning men, we begin to parent from insecurities. We begin to parent from frustrations. We begin to parent ignorantly, or we leave the situation. So, for many, many years, there's been this term deadbeat dad, right? Okay, we can argue that point all day long. What I'm trying to do is talk to young fathers to explain that transition that you may be going through and may not even realize it, but I'm also trying to explain why fathers bow out. Because there's a transition that they don't even know they're going through, but there's also a transition that without the proper help and the proper guidance and the proper understanding, it's easier just to bow out. So I haven't come into my own as a man. I haven't dealt with my own insecurities, and I'm not ready, or I'm not going to say it this way. There's a transition from being selfish to being selfless. Here's another thing that happens. My child is now a reflection of me. Follow me on this. So we want we name our kids after us. They begin to act like us. They begin to behave, all those things. They're a reflection of me. Sometimes that reflection that comes back wakes up things and present things that I either have not dealt with or I struggle to deal with. Here's what I'm saying. And understand, I was 19, almost 20 when I had my first child. And if it were not for my mother protecting me, meaning she came in and said, no, you're not dropping out of school. You're going to do this. And she just basically took over my child, Janaea. That's little Michelle. It is what it is. Then Imani comes along. But here's what I'm getting at. There was a time when, as they began to grow up and learn things on their own, do certain things, whether good, bad, or indifferent, right? and I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to respond to it. I don't know what to say. And they're having successes. I need you to catch this. They're having successes that I didn't even have, is a reflection back. And their constant development is a constant reminder I need to continue to develop. Catch that. As fathers, our kids are a reflection that we still need to learn. We still need to mature. We still need to um, progress. And sometimes, if I don't notice as a father, especially as a young father, that my kids is going to trigger things in me that I didn't even realize that was happening, how do I respond to my kid? I have parents who don't like their kids because of what those kids reflect back to them. Think about that. So I want young fathers to understand the transition that they're going to go through and be aware of all of these things that happens, so now that we can talk about it. And understand this transition may take time, because here's one of the things we talk about in therapy or in counseling. There's a parallel process, right? Basically, what a parallel process means is that there's two people or things are working themselves out at the same time, moving along the same line. So there's a parallel process. So understand this, fathers, as your child is growing and developing, if you're not growing and developing with them and being a part of this parallel process, the relationship struggles. You struggle as a father. Think about that. Your maturity, your understanding, your wisdom, and so forth has to be developed in order for you to be a progressive and an effective father. So understand this transition, that just having a kid does not make you a man. Okay. So understand the transition that a lot of men go through. And I think I'm going to do this show in two parts because there's so much information. So here's some tips. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with the transition for fatherhood? I think, and in fact, I think I'm going to do this in two parts. No, I know I'm going to do this in two parts because today I want to just talk about how to process through this transition. Here's the thing. If you're an expecting father, start now. Don't, I'm not going to attack gender reveals and all that stuff. I just think it's stupid, but that's just me. So while you're out doing the gender reveals, while you're out getting the baby shower ready and all that good stuff, young fathers, here's the first thing I'm going to suggest that you do. Find a mentor. Find a father figure mentor that can you can talk to about raising especially a young child. What is your role as father? But more importantly, talk about your process, what you're going through, your fears, your insecurities, your questions and confusion. Talk about that. Find you somebody who either raised some kids or a professional. And I'm not talking about any dad. I'm talking about a dad who raised their kids, whether, and let me get this caveat, whether they were in the home or not, but they were involved. Find yourself a mentor. Here's the other thing. And you may need a therapist for this one. So the first thing is find a mentor. The second thing is take some time out on this. Take some time out and examine your own upbringing. Follow me on this. Examine your own upbringing, meaning examine how your parents raised you, your family raised you. Talk about that with somebody, because here's the issue. That will come up as a father. Good, bad, or indifferent, when it's time to be a father and we don't know what to do and life is happening, we will resort to our upbringing. Now, here's the thing. I don't care who you are or how great of a childhood you have or have had. When I say examine your upbringing, what I am saying is what didn't work for you. Understand why you see things the way you see things. Understand why you believe what you believe. Take the good, leave the bad, and create your own version of fatherhood. But you got to examine your own upbringing. Do you want to spank your kids? Do you want to yell at your kids? Do you want to, how will you do consequences? How will you spend time with your kids? Here's the other thing, which also goes along with that, is have a plan. Do you know what kind of father you want to be? Do you know what you want, how you want to raise your kids? Or is it, well, my mama raised me this way, my daddy raised me that way, so we just gonna go for it? No. Have a plan, have a set of ideas, have a set of values, have a set of morals that you will parent from. For example, if I value kids and I want to develop them, so I want to have a balance of discipline. I want to have a balance of reward. I want to be able to show them love, but I also want to be able to discipline when they need it, but I'm going to use wisdom, right? So what I'm saying is, as you're seeking a mentor, start to examine your upbringing so those negative things and even those traumatic things do not affect you as a father. Here's the other thing. Some of you might grapple with this one. It's no longer just about you. Here's the thing. Now you have to make decisions based off of a life that you are now responsible for. So understanding that this is no longer about you. So we're going to get a mentor. We're going to examine our own upbringing, right? We're going to seek wisdom. Here's the other thing, real quick. So we're going to get a mentor. We're going to examine our own upbringing. We're going to establish a plan and a set of rules of how we want to raise our kids, how we want to influence our kids. And then we're going to set a foundation. Here's the thing. I knew how my parents raised me. And when I say my parents, I mean my mama and my grandma and other influences. And going in, I knew I didn't really want to whoop my kids. But when them little suckers were kids, I reverted to what I knew. It eventually got to a point where whoopings wasn't an issue. But I only know what I know. And that's what I'm telling you. You only know what you know, and some of you don't even know what you know. So you and the kid's mom, whoever she is, whether she's your wife, your girlfriend, or whatever, need to sit down and have a conversation about your plan for raising these kids and what are your values, what is your plan, what is your morals, what is your base of raising these kids. Seek a mentor, examine yourself, because I could tell you this. I could tell you, here's the thing. You want to know, for us older people, you want to know what kind of parent you are? Ask your kids. A lot of times, a lot of times, we are doing the best that we can as parents, not always knowing how it affect our kids until we ask them. And then here's the problem. Do we validate it? And what I mean by validate it, do we give excuses? Do we try to explain? The thing is, their experience is their experience. Now, do not be afraid. And I know parenting classes, they are what they are. But understand this. You got to have some type of knowledge as a father, whether you're getting it through a mentor, whether you're getting it through therapy, whether you're getting it through a formal class, have a plan. Here's the other thing. Fathers, and this is going to go into the next show, but I'll talk about it real quick right now. Understand this. You are influencing your kids merely by your actions. I put a post up the other day that 93% of communication is nonverbal. But even when it comes to kids, boys are mimicking what they see. What do I mean by that, fathers, young fathers? Don't expect your kids to be different or to do something different if it's different than what you're showing them. So if you're showing their mother disrespect, guess what? They're going to disrespect their mother and women. If you're showing them absence, guess what? You're letting them know how important you are to them, or they are to you, by the absence of your presence. They learn behaviors by watching, by seeing. Kids don't listen. People don't listen. But they pay attention and they do what they see. This even goes back to why you should examine your own upbringing, because you're going to do what you saw. Fatherhood is going to be one of your greatest accomplishments, because you, as a father, will affect this earth for generations, through generations, because of your children. All of your descendants will be a part of your legacy. So examine yourself as you begin to develop as a father. Understand that there's a transition period. Understand that you're going to go through changes mentally, emotionally, and all of those things. But if you're trying to do it in silence and doing it alone, you're going to struggle. So my hope is that, at least for today's topic, you begin to understand this transition period that you're going to go through. After the baby shower's done, after all the congratulations, and after all the handshakes and the cigar smoking and all that stuff, now it's time to get to work. Raising a child will expose so many insecurities if not dealt with or talked about. And I haven't even told half my story of me transitioning into fatherhood. Not just manhood, I'm talking fatherhood, two different things. So, for tonight, understand that you're going to go through a transitionary period. Understand you need to seek guidance, you need to seek support, you need to seek wisdom. Not just information, I'm saying wisdom. So whether it's through a pastor, whether it's through other fathers, whether it's through just a mentor that you look up to, whether it's through therapy, seek wisdom, seek guidance, and process through your transition. When you are struggling as a father, say so we can deal with it. So, once again, this has been Indestructible Souls, mental wellness for African American men and boys. And you can check me out every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can also connect with me at Beauregard Therapy. And also, don't forget, Hearts of Men, mental wellness for African American men and boys. Take that back. Just used to saying it. Mental wellness group for African American men. Moving forward together, beginning April 7th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. You can sign up through Eventbrite, or you can email me directly at heartsofmen@beauregardtherapy.com. So once again, this has been Indestructible Souls. I want to thank you for supporting, and I will see you next week, and we're out.